Hello and welcome to Relatively Ordinary. I'm your co-host, Betsy.
And I'm Karl.
Hi, Karl. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. I don't think I had a choice.
No, you didn't. My co-host, my partner in crime, and my spouse of 18 years, because this is our anniversary weekend.
18 years. Mm-hmm. We made it. We made it. 18 years is the cozy blanket and sweatpants anniversary, for those of you who aren't familiar.
Yes. And we checked off both those boxes,
yes,
which was pretty fantastic. I'm even wearing my cozy sweatpants.
Me too.
Yep. And we've known each other for a little over 23 years, so it's been a long, magical ride. Some
Yes.
rough.
Magic.
I know, magic that we made it this far. Some rough spots, some amazing times. You know, it's been good.
Yeah, overall, it's been great.
Yes. And now we're doing this podcast together. This is our very first episode where we're launching into all the things. And I'll just go over a general premise of how things will flow.
That sounds great.
We, obviously have our own dynamic as a married couple, bringing you some of our, ponderings and conversations. We're going to talk about some fun things. And I think that the bulk of what we hope to do is bring big topics and help filter them through 3 different lenses: society at large, it might be a society at large topic, and how that might impact within our community and personal lives, and just have some robust discussion around it. And I don't know, anything else you want to add into that?
No, I think you said it well. I think, I view it as a, we live our lives and we're impacted at multiple levels through things that are happening in the world. And there's things like society at large type of issues. There's things that impact our community that we can see in the communities that we're a part of. And then, of course, how do they impact us inside our house, inside our family?
Mm-hmm. And conversations, are a good way to connect and feel like we're trying to find a balance. And we can connect the personal with the universal in a way and bring it to you. Hopefully you're interested and maybe want to be part of the conversation as well. So, that's relatively ordinary.
All right. So the part that you didn't mention is we're going to have...
I mentioned it.
No, I don't think you mentioned it.
I did.
No.
I did.
Okay, what did you mention then?
I just said that we're going to keep it fun. Read between the lines.
Okay, so the part that she didn't mention, because she got that wrong, is that one of us is going to bring that topic on each episode. The other one is not going to have awareness of that topic ahead of time.
Oh, I didn't mention that. No.
And to warm us up to the episode, the person who is... Betsy's bringing the main topic this week, but yes, the other person is going to ask a warm-up question just to get us in the flow of the conversation. Mm-hmm. A quick question, quick bite question, perhaps. Maybe bite spelled with a Y. Stop.
Just for the audience, I just don't like that word.
It gives her the chills.
Yeah.
So anyway, the warm-up question for this week is, why the hell do you want to do a podcast?
Surprise. No, I would say first and foremost, I just like hearing myself talk.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Finally, it's out there. Out there.
No, that was a joke. I actually kind of cringe, but I'm okay with it. Well, I think for 2 reasons. We have some interesting conversations, and not just with each other, but with people in our community and people we work with and family members. And as someone who's really interested in those topics and conversations, I thought others might be interested in hearing. But something that is even bigger than that for me personally is that I, unlike you, don't journal. I, don't necessarily do a great job of collecting pictures every place I go, cataloging events. But I thought this would be a great way to sort of have a time capsule. of my experiences and our shared experiences and, what's going on in the world today. So I thought it could be fun, whether this is, interesting and important to others or not, it will be to me.
Yeah. Well, that's great because I like that time capsule angle. It also means that there will be value if we have 2 listeners instead of 200 billion listeners, like we plan to. Yeah, I love that answer. So
how about you?
For me, I think that in this world that we're living in, social media and, all of the degrading institutions of media and information, but also this blossoming world of, individuals creating content. I think it's far better to be a creator than a consumer in that landscape. And I think this is just a fun and interesting way for us to connect with each other and to start to participate a little more actively in that creator marketplace.
Yes. But don't you think if, there are creators, there need to be consumers?
Of course.
Maybe smart consumers.
I mean, we're all consumers, but I think it's are you purely a consumer and a passive consumer versus an active participant who is an independent thinker and, adds value in the world. So, great. If we add like a shred of value, I'll be happy. And if we don't, then we get to listen to ourselves talk.
Yes. Well, thank you for clarifying. That was very interesting. And I agree. I think that's wonderful. So now it's my time to ask the big topic. This is where I get to corner you like a scared animal because you have no idea what's coming.
No idea.
No. And then sometimes it might be controversial. I might save up that argument we never talked about. And, then we do it while we're recording. And you have to be nice.
We should actually do that a live episode. That would be better.
Yeah, just duke it out and whatever got us all hot and bothered that week. But no, that's actually not what the topic is. The topic this week, and I'll sort of, pose it with a little background knowledge for you, is really about difficult conversations. And, specifically with our teens, right? And, we have 2 teenagers, but teenagers in general, right? The population who is in that demographic and maybe even early 20s and preteens. But, there's a lot going on that, this week, but I'd say these days regarding the media and friends and current events and just being a teenager and that rite of passage. And so I'll just kind of share a story if that's okay. And this week, there's been a lot in the media that's given our teenagers pause. Things that when I was a teenager, I remember hearing current events that would strike me. And I always thought, okay, those are adult issues. I'm going to move on. And I'm finding that the way media works now and, their brains, like what things are evolving at school, that it is more important to them and they are having more conversations. But we've also had this personal situation where we were staying near where my in-laws live, and there's a shared house and space we have, and we were up there for the weekend. And when someone was cleaning up afterwards in a bathroom one of our children was using, they found some marijuana. And it wasn't, there are many forms of marijuana. It was the actual plant. And, there was some discussion that came out of that.
Dried flower, not the plant. It wasn't a cannabis plant growing
Someone
in the
was
bathroom.
Cultivating a greenhouse.
Correct.
That'd be a very gross bathroom too. It was like behind the toilet and just like growing. It was, dried. This is where I'm a little bit of a naive person, but
the cool kids call it bud.
The cool kids call it bud. Yeah. Yes. So some bud was discovered, which, who these days is smoking bud? Probably not their demographic. And I'm always naive, thinking, not my children, but it gave pause, right? We have to have this conversation then with each other, and then how do we bring it up with our children? And it wouldn't be the first time, but at the same rate, it's an evolving discussion. And we have teenagers who are 13 and 16, soon to be 14 and 17. So they're, thinking about me historically. And I was a pretty good kid, but thinking about me historically, I'm like, okay, this is the time. And, it brought up some things, difficult conversations this week. So my question, now that I've brought it up, is what has worked for you as a parent? And so we'll start on that family level. So what has worked for you as a parent to have difficult conversations with your teen?
Well, I think there's a few. I mean, one of the classic tips that you've heard, I think it works really well, is to have difficult conversations when you're in the car, because you are somewhat on an equal footing as far as
trapped with a seatbelt.
You're trapped with a seatbelt in a fast-moving pile of metal and plastic and rubber, and so you're trapped, but you're facing the same direction. If the parent is driving, you can't really make eye contact with your kid, and I think you want to, but like when you're having difficult conversations. But I think it also helps if your kid is feeling uncomfortable with the topic, or the parent is feeling uncomfortable with the topic, you can sort of just avoid that and stay locked in on the road.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that just from a very practical, tactical level works really well.
I agree.
I think, it's really important to, I mean, we're lucky to have really great kids. I think it's important to assume positive intent. Like, if you kind of come out guns blazing with like, why'd you do that? You're an idiot. Like, blah, blah, blah.
Which, frankly is my tendency.
Yeah. It can make the, whoever's receiving that information very defensive.
Yeah. Shut down.
I think the other thing is that like kids don't really have like teenagers are more sophisticated than we give them credit for, but you still don't really have like a very strong sense of self. So as you are, the way that you're like talking about tough conversations or bringing up like awkward topics, they're forming their sense of self in that moment actively with how you're interacting with them. Yeah. And if you treat them like an adult and you treat them like, hey, I trust you, they can open up in ways that they might not if you're sort of like distrustful or overly aggressive or overly nervous or whatever. So I think, those are just some things that work for me.
Yeah. And I agree. I think it's about leading with respect. And we had this difficult conversation. I think what you do really good and that I don't do as well, because I'm reactive, which can be helpful in certain situations, but you process. And you led with an open-ended question and assuming positive intent. And it came across really well. We were able to gather some additional information and make our own impressions, and no feelings were hurt. And I think it creates a culture of honesty.
Yeah. And I'll just mention too, since, like we didn't have any reason to think that this was our kids' cannabis.
No, so that's true.
It was sort of like more, did you guys notice anything weird? Like, did you notice that it smelled like weed upstairs? Because I think, the suspicion is that some previous renter or someone else who has access to the house was doing it, not them.
Well, and so then we're also thinking like, how did they overlook that? Which might be a good thing because they're more naive than we think, right? But yes, no, we it wasn't that we were super suspicious. So if we were, it might have gone a little differently. However, I think it was a good opportunity. We could have swept it under the rug and ignored it and moved on, but we know that it's important to have those conversations because you want to have some, transparency about some of these big topics, and you want to ensure that they're safe and making good decisions. But also know that the inevitable is, and what I think every parent wants is for your child to, get into some trouble, right? There are some safeguards, but you want them to explore, right? How formative was it for you to be able to have your first drink. Underage, very likely. Well, I know it was for you. Smoke marijuana, do stupid things, right? Do things that your parents wouldn't approve of.
It's part of growing up.
Yeah. And, you have some safeguards, you have people to fall back on and you can trust if you need help. But that's very formative of becoming who you are and creating social bonds with others and just, it's part of evolution. So I don't think it would be beneficial to have, really any child be so controlled and so submissive to what their parents expect. Because what do we know? We're in our 40s. We're boring. So that's just my opinion.
Maybe you're boring.
Oh, okay. Yes, maybe just I'm boring. So if we bring this to a community level, and I like to think that when kids become teenagers, they are such social creatures that we get knocked down a peg, right? We're less important than their social environments. And so it's a shared approach to parenting. We have these social circles. And I feel extremely grateful that for both of our kids, they have good groups of friends and we know most of the parents, but it can get really rocky when you're not as familiar or maybe you're not privy to all their social relationships. So how have you handled some of those potential challenges? If you're not sure what your kid's up to because they're with unfamiliar friends or, perhaps you've, never thought about it and now I'm making things worse.
No, I think it's really important that, we're very lucky to live in a great community and we have, our kids have great friends and they come from families that we know and have gotten to know. But I think it's important to socialize with your kids' friends' families, get to know the parents, if you can. And, it's because first of all, like those are people that you can count on, hopefully if, you have some kind of emergency, you're in a pinch and you're stuck at work and you can't get a ride or,
Totally.
you need someone to go over, you need your kid to go over to their friend's house after school, that sort of thing. And know that like they're going to be safe and cared for and, you can trust what's happening there. I think to your point about letting kids have, if you don't know the other families or other kids, like letting kids have some level of freedom to make their own friendships, make their own decisions.
Yeah, they need that autonomy.
But, to stay curious, I think it's important for us as parents to be curious about what's going on. If we hear something about a kid who like maybe got in trouble for something, it's like, oh, do you know Johnny? Like, what's this thing about him getting in trouble? Like, and just kind of just test out how they see things and what their what their interpretation of events is.
Yeah, and what I would say, it's important to do that early, right? The relationships we were able to form started when the kids were young, and it would certainly be more challenging if you had to move around a lot or maybe those relationships with the other families weren't so easy to cultivate. But it does help to get involved so that you can be familiar as they get older with the different people in your community. And I would say there have certainly been times where our ideals and way of parenting is different, but your kids can see that, and maybe that's a good conversation, and not necessarily pros and cons, but just respecting differences and why, and being open-minded to it. I think can sort of create a well-balanced, logical thinking child, and make you feel comfortable exposing them to different environments and cultures and ways of thinking. So I know it's allowed me to just, okay, this is me. I appreciate what we do and I respect what others do. And they have an influence on my child. And, whether I can't always control those influences, but for the most part, I think they've been positive. I don't have an experience with them that has been negative, but I know there have been experiences with me and my upbringing and, my siblings where there were some negative influences, and it's hard. It's hard to, play a role as a parent to disrupt that if you're not very confident or comfortable with it. But we've been pretty lucky. And if we think on a society level, and this isn't related to our personal experience with the bud, but we've, this week in particular, there's been some, pretty big events in the media, and the kids are aware of it. It's current events that, they get, all that information through their feeds, and it gets discussed with friends.
What we're talking about is Charlie Kirk was shot and killed this week, and Betsy didn't know who Charlie Kirk was, which I love.
Wow, why do you have to throw me under the bus?
This is the thing though, is the kids definitely knew who he was, and they're 16 and 13, and they're kind of in that target audience for him. You weren't in his target audience for messaging, right? Which is why you didn't know who he was, but like they definitely know who he was.
Yes. And everything that happened around that event, and there's a lot of social media around that event, they were able to take it in and discuss it with their friends. It might have even been discussed at school, and
it surely was.
Yeah, and their interpretation of it. Well, I'm pretty proud. Their interpretation is that this is terrible, right? No one deserves that, even if they didn't necessarily agree with his messaging. And I think what stood out to me above all else, like not getting political, not sharing opinions or taking sides, is that they were, and this is a term you use this week, they're humanists, right? And like, to me, that's a beautiful thing. We've raised these children to be compassionate, caring people who know that this is wrong, no matter who you are. That this was a really sad event, and he was a father and a husband and didn't deserve this. And
I think
it's hard for them to reconcile.
The topic of difficult conversations, I personally did not like what Charlie Kirk stood for, and a lot of the messaging that I found to be very antagonistic and divisive, for the sole purpose of being antagonistic and divisive, and raising a lot of money off of that. However, one thing that you can give him credit for is that he did not shy from difficult conversations.
It's true.
And in some ways, even like, he wanted to look people in the eye and have that difficult conversation. I mean, he definitely purposefully chose audiences that he knew that he could beat in a debate, which is a little bit like LeBron James showing up to play one-on-one basketball at local high schools. But regardless, like, he had the courage to, bring opinions that many people in his audiences found to be unpopular, and challenge them and be very, direct about it, which I think it's an important thing to be able to have difficult conversations.
Productive discourse.
Yes. And at all levels, right? In our community, in our society, and, in our own house.
Yes. I know as a select board member, you get a lot of those difficult conversations. So, we all have roles where it comes up and it becomes important to talk about. Well, that all being said, it's been a week of processing a lot of things and thinking about how we show up as role models, and how we, not necessarily need to repair a situation, but just not ignore it, right? And be conscious about how our parenting might come into play, especially with our teenagers. So, as a wrap up here, what I want to say is, we're dealing with some difficult times. That's probably true any week of the year, but we'll kind of wrap up most of our podcasts because it's unfinished, right? So I want to know, what are you still chewing on from our conversation, and what feels relatively ordinary about it all?
Okay. So I think what I'm still chewing on is we don't have this conversation enough in our communities. I think, looking at kind of that family, community, society at large, I think we know we're broken, society at large. And I think, we know that having difficult conversations in our household, especially in a marriage, which has lasted 18 years, if we can make it to Monday.
Our prospects are good.
I think actually in our community, I mean, I'm thinking about like some of these conversations, like, and maybe this is more of a man thing too, but like how often are we having this type of discussion around how do we approach this or whatever, like with those, like, other parents in our community who have kids the same age. Like, I think there's a lot we can learn from each other, and there's a lot of support we can provide each other. But I think sometimes there's a reluctance to.
It's funny you said maybe as a father.
Yeah.
But I definitely have had these conversations with some of the mothers. I love it too. I wish there was more time, but it's pick up and drop off, and sitting at the sidelines of a field. I've definitely had these conversations, so I do feel like I'm on the same page, which normalizes it. And if I think about, okay, what feels relatively ordinary, my worries and fears and present situation is very common. Sometimes you can feel isolated, like, oh, wow, if that was my kid who was smoking marijuana, or is it only my kid who failed their math test, or is it only my kid who is hitting a rough spot and is so reactive whenever I try to have simple conversations, and they're going through the throes of hormone changes. Like, no, it's not. This is a very typical circumstance, generationally speaking, but also the here and now for what we're going through as a family. And I think that just every time I have those conversations with parents, and maybe you just need to get go out and hang out with some of your other fathers.
I think this could be a topic for a whole other episode. I think that in general, men don't have these conversations.
Yeah.
It's, I've had some of them. And I've got some good friends in the community, but like, I think in general, if you're a man, you're talking about like, fixing your truck, or the yard work you have to do, or like, the football game or whatever.
Yeah.
And you
maybe not getting into some of the sensitive stuff. You can also hang out with the moms.
Yeah. Some of the moms will tolerate me.
Yeah.
Most of them are.
Well, I think
not having my bullshit.
I think that was a great first go, babe. I love the conversation. I feel good about it. I feel relatively ordinary. I'm ready to tackle what the rest of the week brings.
Yeah, I mean, great pilot episode.
Yes, a happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us on this first episode of Relatively Ordinary. We appreciate the audience and hope to see you soon.
All right. Peace. Yeah, that was good.